The Goldsboro Miracle. The Mark 39 hydrogen bomb is 250 times more powerful than the weapon that leveled Hiroshima. In 1961, the United States accidentally dropped 2 in North Carolina. One of those bombs completed 3 of its 4 arming stages. It came within a single low-voltage switch of vaporizing the entire East Coast. The world's most advanced nuclear safety system was defeated by a simple fuel leak. So, how is Goldsboro still on the map? On January 24, 1961, at midnight, a B-52G Stratofortress call sign. Keep 19 was on a routine 24-hour airborne alert mission. On board were 8 crewmen and 2 multi-megaton thermonuclear weapons. During a mid-air refueling rendezvous, the tanker crew noticed something terrifying. The B-52's right wing was venting fuel. 37,000 pounds of jet fuel vanished in under 3 minutes. The commander, Major Walter Tully, attempted an emergency landing at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, but as the aircraft descended through 10,000 feet, the structural integrity of the wing failed. The bomber began a violent gyration, a centrifugal spin so intense it tore the plane apart in mid-air. As the fuselage disintegrated, centrifugal forces pulled the release lanyards, exactly as if a crew member had intentionally dropped the payload. The 2 Mark 39 bombs were flung into the night sky over the farming community of Faro. This is where safety became pure luck. Bomb number 1 functioned exactly as designed for a nuclear strike. Its parachute deployed, its internal timers activated, its batteries charged. When it landed upright in a field, it had passed every arming sequence except the final, safe arm switch. In a 1969 declassified report, Sandia Labs engineer Parker F. Jones noted that this single notoriously unreliable switch was the only thing that prevented a 3.8 megaton detonation. Bomb number 2 was different. It plummeted in free fall and slammed into a muddy field at 700 miles per hour. It buried itself 180 feet deep into the North Carolina swamp. The impact was so violent, the weapon's indicator was found in the armed position. However, the same impact that armed the bomb also crushed the very components needed to trigger the explosion. It was too broken to blow up. The Air Force recovered the first bomb and the plutonium pit of the second, but the secondary stage containing highly enriched uranium was lost in deep flooded groundwater. After weeks of failed excavation, the Pentagon gave up. They bought the land, they paved it over, they forbade digging deeper than 5 feet. To this day, part of a Cold War thermonuclear weapon remains buried in a private field just north of Goldsboro. The Damascus socket wrench. The Titan II was the most powerful intercontinental ballistic missile in the American arsenal. Standing 103 feet tall, it carried a 9-megaton W-53 warhead, 3 times more powerful than every bomb dropped in World War II combined. In 1980, this multi-billion-dollar weapon system was destroyed by a socket wrench. A weapon designed to end civilizations was defeated by a 3-pound piece of metal. September 18, 1980, Damascus, Arkansas. Launch Complex 3747. Senior Airman David Powell and Airman Jeffrey Plum were performing a routine pressure check on the missile's oxidizer tank. Against new regulations, Powell brought a heavy ratchet instead of a torque wrench. He stood on a platform 80 feet above the base of the missile. The 8-pound socket slipped from his wrench. The socket fell like a bullet. It dropped 80 feet. It bounced off a thrust mount. It slammed into the side of the missile. The Titan II was built with a skin thinner than a dime to save weight. The socket pierced the aluminum skin of the Stage 1 fuel tank. Immediately, a high-pressure jet of Aerozine 50 rocket fuel began spraying into the silo. For the next 8 hours, the Air Force scrambled to prevent catastrophe. The fuel was hypergolic, meaning it would ignite instantly if it touched the oxidizer. At 3 a.m., a specialized team entered. Senior Airman David Livingston, Sergeant Jeff Kennedy. They attempted an emergency venting. As they worked, fuel vapors ignited. The explosion was so powerful it launched the 740-ton reinforced concrete silo door 200 feet into the air and 600 feet into the woods. The 9-megaton warhead was catapulted out of the silo into a nearby ditch. This warhead was notorious among Sandia engineers as one of the least stable in the fleet. If it had detonated, a quarter of Arkansas would have been vaporized. David Livingston died of his injuries that morning. 21 others were wounded. The irony: the warhead safety mechanisms actually worked, but only because the explosion that threw it was so violent it crushed the internal firing components before they could signal a detonation. In the aftermath, the Air Force tried to downplay the incident, but the scale of the destruction was impossible to hide. The Damascus silo was never rebuilt. Within 7 years, the entire Titan II program was deactivated, proving that sometimes the greatest threat to a nuclear power is not an enemy missile. It is a dropped tool. The Mars Bluff Backyard Bomb. On March 11, 1958, Walter Gregg was sitting in his parlor while his children played in the backyard. Above him at 15,000 feet, a B-47E Stratojet carried a 7,600-pound Mark VI nuclear bomb. Within seconds, Greg's quiet afternoon ended. An atomic weapon landed in his garden. This is the only time in history a nuclear bomb has detonated on U.S. civilian property. And it happened because a navigator needed a handhold. The flight part of Operation Snow Flurry was headed to the United Kingdom. Shortly after takeoff from Hunter Air Force Base, a warning light flickered. The bomb's locking pin was not engaged. Captain Bruce Kolka, the navigator, crawled into the bomb bay to investigate. In cramped, vibrating darkness, he reached up to steady himself. He grabbed the first thing his hand touched, the emergency release lever. The 4-ton bomb instantly unhooked. It slammed onto the closed bomb bay doors. The weight forced the doors open. The Mark VI plummeted 15,000 feet toward the rural community of Mars Bluff. Kolka nearly fell from the aircraft. He survived by grabbing a support beam as wind roared through the open bay. The bomb struck just 50 yards from the Gregg house. It did not trigger a nuclear chain reaction. The fissile plutonium core was stored separately in a container called a birdcage, but the Mark VI still carried several tons of conventional high explosives. The impact triggered a massive TNT blast. It vaporized the children's playhouse. It leveled the garage. It shoved the Gregg home off its foundation. Miraculously, no one died. Walter, his wife Effie, their 3 children, all survived with minor cuts and bruises. Their niece required surgery for internal bleeding. The blast left a crater 70 feet wide and 35 feet deep. When the Air Force arrived, they cordoned off the area. They checked for radiation. They told the Greggs the land was mostly safe. The Greggs sued the United States Air Force for the destruction of their lives. After 3 years of legal battles, the government settled for $54,000, roughly $500,000 today. Walter Gregg lived until 2013. He never forgot the day the Cold War landed in his backyard. Today, the crater still exists, overgrown, hidden in South Carolina woods, a permanent scar from a time when a simple slip of a hand could have erased a town. The Tybee Island Mystery. As you watch this, a 7,600-pound hydrogen bomb sits somewhere off the coast of Georgia. It has been there for over 60 years. Millions of tourists swim in these waters every summer, unaware they are vacationing above a lost piece of the Cold War. The U.S. government says it is safe to leave it there, but the documents tell a different story. February 5, 1958, 2 a.m., AB-47. Stratojet bomber was taking part in a simulated combat exercise. Suddenly, an F-86 fighter pilot named Clarence Stewart lost track of the bomber on his radar. The 2 aircraft collided at high speed. Stewart ejected as his jet disintegrated. But the B-47, piloted by Major Howard Richardson, remained airborne. His wing was crippled. His landing gear was hanging by a thread. Richardson could not land with a heavy payload without risking a massive conventional explosion on the runway. He requested permission to jettison the weapon. At 1:33 a.m. over the shallow waters of Wassaw Sound near Tybee Island, the crew released the Mark 15 hydrogen bomb. They saw no explosion. The weapon disappeared into Atlantic silt. For decades, the Air Force claimed it was a dummy bomb, that the nuclear capsule had been replaced with lead. But in 1966, declassified testimony from Assistant Secretary of Defense W.J. Howard revealed the Tybee bomb was a complete weapon with a plutonium trigger. If true, the bomb contains 400 pounds of high explosives and enough enriched uranium to cause a multi-megaton disaster. The Air Force searched for 10 weeks. They found nothing. In 2004, retired Lieutenant Colonel Derek Duke detected a spike in radiation in the area. The government dismissed his findings. They claimed it was natural radiation from monazite sand. Their official stance remains unchanged. The bomb lies buried under 15 feet of silt. Digging it up would be more dangerous than leaving it to decay. We live in a world where the line between peace and total annihilation has often been drawn by a single switch, a dropped wrench, a lucky handful of mud. We are told our safety is guaranteed by the most sophisticated technology on Earth, but history shows the greatest threat to our existence is not always the enemy's arsenal. It is our own. The archives are full of stories like these. History that was almost erased. What should we cover next? Comment the specific event, the secret project, the failure you want explained. We are reading every suggestion.